Okay, let's have a look at Ivanchuk's round 1 win. By the way, it does remind me that Ivanchuk was depressed after losing to a young GM a few months ago. It's great to see him back in this Olympiad, so I make no excuse for covering him more than any other player. He's played very exciting chess with both sides, both white and black. So in round 1 he was playing someone from Iraq, Ahmed Abdulsattar Abdulwahhab, 2-3-4-2. So Ahmed for short plays e4, and after knight f6 Ivanchuk's inviting the Alekhine defence. His opponent's probably a bit scared, he doesn't maybe know the theory of the Alekhine, he just plays knight c3, and we get a transition into the Vienna game. And now after bishop c4 there's this move which, although seems to be rather pesky and again betraying black's blacker development, as if black shouldn't be doing very active things, but it's all theory. It's inviting the dreaded Frankenstein Dracula variation, named by Tim Harding apparently in 1975. It was to express the full gore and aggression of both sides, this Frankenstein Dracula. But unfortunately for white, maybe he was either unaware of that or scared to play into that. White would end up being the exchange up, but facing, perhaps dangerous compensation. White actually timidly played knight takes e4, which gave Ivanchuk no problem whatsoever, as we'll see in the game. But the Frankenstein Dracula was queen h5, crudely hitting f7. So black plays knight d6, cleverly attacking the bishop and protecting f7. Now white doesn't take on e5 here with check. That would just be boring, dull, queen e7. He plays actually bishop b3, keeping the pressure on f7. And now we see knight c6 in Frankenstein Dracula, knight b5 trying to decoy the knight from f7, g6 trying to protect f7, queen f3 putting the attack back on f7, f5 putting the defense back on f7, queen d5 putting the attack back on f7, queen e7 putting the defense back on f7. But as we see from the last move, with Maurice Ashley's Secret of Chess rule, black is losing the c7 in the exchange. But don't worry, it's all intentional to lose the exchange like this, because now the most common move is b6 and bishop b7. After black wins, gets some material back and is the exchange down, black has kind of a scary position with lots of opportunities. So maybe Ahmed didn't like this Frankenstein Dracula line, but what he played is just absolutely terrible, because after d5, he's lost his central grip in terms of a pawn in the centre, and not only that, he plays the move d4 now, which doesn't really help his position much. After d takes c4, he really doesn't want to face, taking his queen being taken on d1. Black could continue like knight c6, bishop f5, almost like that Albin counter gambit trap, with black casting queenside. He doesn't want any of that. So he loses a pawn now. After queen e2, queen takes d4. So it's been a disaster for white, straight out of the opening. Just on move 6. This is just better for black. There's temporary initiative to handle. So knight f3, queen d5. Now we see knight c3. But Ivanchuk's not afraid to give up his dark squared bishop now. He plays bishop b4, and after white castles, he takes on c3, supports his e5 pawn. Okay, now bishop a3 stops in castling kingside, so he supports e5 again. But also there's an idea that he's going to move this bishop and castle queenside if left alone, or play bishop g4. So against bishop g4, maybe white energetically played this move, knight d4. But this does give Ivanchuk the opportunity now to castle queenside. If there was rook d1, I don't know if that was better here, rook d1, to keep white in the game. Try and keep white in the game. There's always queen a5's there hitting a3 and c3. So this knight d4 happened. So bishop d7, and after rook fd1, now black castle queenside. So his material up, and his king's not in any real trouble here. So after knight b3, Ivanchuk plays queen f7, and I don't know if he's laughing by this point. It's a fantastic position to have with the black pieces. He's a pawn up, solid pawn up. Okay, it's opposite coloured bishops, and maybe the b file is something which white can use in theory. But after b6, it looks as though this diagonal, because it's shut with that pawn, Ivanchuk can safely play b6 and further simplify. So he's got rid of the dynamic of the opposite coloured bishops, so it's a knight versus bishop dynamic, and he's giving up c4 in the process, but he doesn't mind here. Okay, so materially, actually black is still a pawn up. Okay, so he was 2 pawns up, and he's giving up that pawn, but he has complete possession of the whole position now after rook d8. So as well as being a pawn up, he's got like queen d5s. The bishop's not that effective in this position. There's not many opportunities for it. The rook has not got many opportunities. It's just positionally lost. So after h3, Ivanchuk played king b7. Now rook b1, queen d5, just offering a trade of queens. It's just hopeless for white. And so Ivanchuk even takes on a2 and goes back, snagging another pawn. What can we say? 2 pawns up and just dominating the position. So queen d2 attacking c3 and f2 now, based on white's last move, which released protection off f2. Okay, so bishop c5 is not really threatening anything. b6 is adequately covered. White can't really coordinate the pieces, so Ivanchuk just played queen takes c3, hitting bishop and rook, and instead of retreating to protect the rook, just white resigned here. It's just a terrible game from white. It looks like he had no counterplay whatsoever and was blasted as early as the second move, the third move, knight takes e4. He didn't really know what he was doing. Let's have a quick look at that. So e4, knight f6, inviting the Alekhine defence. So now after e5, bishop c4, we should have seen the Frankenstein Dracula variation with queen h5. Instead, we just saw black totally and utterly equalise in this position after d5, and now this d takes c4. So white lost a pawn. So actually, black hasn't lost a single pawn here. It's 8 pawns versus 6. Black's 2 pawns up, and now gives up the dark squared bishop. Okay, a little bit controversial, but only if this bishop's really going to be effective. If black can castle queenside, and after this f6 move, the queen, it can freely move away, and e5 is well supported. But white decided knight d4. It gives black the opportunity, which Ivanchuk takes, just to castle queenside with virtually no problems. The clever thing which was done here was to simplify the position, giving up c4, the c4 pawn, but remaining a pawn up, but just dominating basically the entire board. You know, the critical d file, the centre, d5, it's all in black's possession, and this poxy b file, which white can do nothing with. These are not pieces you want in this position, basically. So white ends up losing a2 for nothing as well as another pawn for nothing, and just gives up here. He resigns. So it looks as though it was a smooth crush. It would have been more interesting with on move 4 queen h5, as I say. So this is how Ivanchuk started off this Olympiad, and he's on fine form though. It's got to be said. Ivanchuk's really on fine form, and he knows when to liquidate. He knows to play cheeky tactics in the opening, if they're justified by the details of the position. So he's a very dangerous player with both the white and the black pieces. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.